Hey y'all, welcome to the Throttle podcast. I'm your host, Earnest, here today with just myself, but you know what, that's okay. We're going to try something a little bit different here tonight, here on the Throttle podcast. We're going to do just the recaps tonight here, Tuesday night. That's when I typically try and record, and then potentially on Friday afternoon, Friday night sometime, we're going to try and do a big, race weekend preview. So basically split the recap segment and the preview segment, the looking forward to segment, up to Tuesday and Friday. So we'll see how that goes, and possibly it might be me, my co-host Evan Sager, and then potentially the return of both Mason Morgan and Zach Smith, who haven't been back on the podcast since probably March or April. So we're gonna see how that goes. Of course, Zach is he's at college at the University of Northern Iowa. But he's coming back this week, so it's going to be great to see him first and foremost. We'll see if they're able to record, although then again, 4 people with 3 mics is going to be a little bit crowded, but we'll find out. Anyways, getting into the quick episode here. Prayers out, of course, to Daniel Suarez's wife and family after that big car crash. Super glad they're all okay. And we just pray that they continue to be okay, and with potential injuries and all that, just so glad that they're okay. Of course, Suarez has had a tough year, with this and, his release from Trackhouse at the end of the year. So just so glad that they're all okay. Getting into the ROVAL now. Tire wear for a road course was pretty dang huge, for road course standards and for the ROVAL standards. I mean, I haven't watched the Charlotte ROVAL race in a few years now. I think they did pretty well with the product for, an SVG dominated race, as we'll get to that in a minute. But I think overall the tire wear was definitely pretty well, to be honest. There was definitely fall off for sure. And it led to some battles, because even though SVG dominated this race for much of it, the battles with him and Larson and Bell late in the race, that was pretty dang good for road course standards. So, SVG won Stage 1 as part of his dominant run. Blaney won Stage 2, which is huge for him because that tacks on another playoff point. And he's going to actually start above the cut line for the championship, as we'll get to those points in a minute. I want to talk about Ross Chastain. Ross Chastain, man, I feel bad. I mean, so he slid on pit road and missed the pit road exit, which lost him probably 15-20 spots. He battled back towards the end of the race, but then he sped on pit road, which really put the nail in the coffin. Coming on the last lap, he and Logano were tied in points, had to pass Hamlin in the chicane, tries to dive bomb it like it's Truex and Jimmy Johnson 2018, spins, Chastain spins him and Hamlin out. Chastain tries to back up across the start-finish, but Logano passes him and all that, and Chastain gets eliminated. Just hate to see it. So Logano, even though it's an odd year, he's moving on into the round of 8. Chastain, Reddick, who won the pole, Bubba, and Cindric were eliminated. Cindric had a nightmare day, got spun, hit, just the whole 9 yards. I'm pretty sure he finished last in this race. So just a nightmare run for Cindric after coming in a must-win situation, and he did everything but win, which is just unfortunate for him. SVG got the win, dominating fashion. His first win at the Charlotte ROVAL after finishing 7th there last year. His 5th win of the year, which ties Hamlin for the most wins this season, and his 6th career win. Of course, all those on road courses, although he's trying to figure out these ovals. He's had some flashes. He was 14th at Richmond. He got his first oval top 10 last week at Kansas after finishing 10th, so we'll see. SVG, this is his 5th road course win in a row, so officially on the 6 road courses this year, his finishes are 6th, 1st, 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 and 1st. So the 5 road course wins in a row. It's second all-time behind Jeff Gordon, who had 6 in a row from like 1997 to 2000. Remember, this was back when they only had 2 road course races a year, so keep that in mind. Of course, we won't know if SVG can tie or even potentially break that record, but we'll start with the tie. We won't know if SVG can tie that record until next March at COTA, which was the only road course he didn't win this year, and really the only road course he hasn't fully conquered yet, per se. He finished 6th in the spring, although he led like the second most laps. So, and conveniently, it's my 5th win of the year, and it's the first time that someone has won back-to-back races with 2 different drivers. Of course, Mason won 3 in a row to start the year, or 3 in a row for races 2, 3, and 4 with Christopher Bell. But this is the first time that somebody's won back-to-back races with 2 different drivers. Of course, I won with SVG at the ROVAL, and then I won the previous week at Kansas with Chase Elliott in that thrill-over race. Larson finished 2nd, and Bell finished 3rd after battling really late there with SVG in that thriller. The big difference with SVG is because he was so good, he was able to conserve his tires enough, although there was still a lot of fall-off, but he only pitted like twice in the final stage when everybody else pit 3 times. So SVG ended up winning by like 15 plus seconds. And after winning at Mexico by like 16 some seconds, I believe I saw this stat, SVG is like the first driver since like Bobby Allison in 1982 to win 2 races by more than 15 seconds, which is insane to think about. Busher had a good run in 4th. He's such an underrated road course racer. He straight up beat SVG at Watkins Glen 2024, as we know, to win that race. And Michael McDowell finished 5th. He finished 5th at Mexico earlier this year. And he had arguably the dominant car at Chicago over SVG until that throttle cable issue took him out at Chicago. And SVG still won Chicago anyway, so. And then Riley Herbst was disqualified post-race after finishing 30th for failing to meet minimum weight. So back-to-back years of the ROVAL where somebody's been disqualified for failing to meet minimum weight. Of course, was Bowman last year, failing to meet minimum weight. Of course, that put Logano back in the playoffs and he won the championship. This time it does not affect the playoffs. So points now before the fall Las Vegas race, Las Vegas 2. It's the first race in the round of 8. It's crunch time now. You got Hamlin at +8, Blaney at +6. He would be +5 without that stage win at the ROVAL race. And then you got Larson and Byron at +4, Bell at -4, and then Briscoe -14, Chase Elliott -14, and Logano comes in -24. Of course, Logano won this race, the fall Las Vegas race, last year, and won it in the fall of 22, both of those 2 times launched him on a run to win championships. So we will see if Logano can kind of repeat that magic. Our picks for the ROVAL, I picked SVG. He won, led 57 laps, which is the most laps. So I chopped some more off of Evan's points lead, which we'll get to points in a couple minutes. Evan picked Reddick, who started on pole, had the Xfinity fastest lap, which ironically was the very first lap. Reddick led 3 laps to finish 10th. Zach picked Briscoe, who kind of had a quiet day, finished 14th. He was a little bit stressed on the cut line, but really the battle came down between like Chastain and Logano, and Reddick was up there but faded late, although still rallied to finish 10th. And then Mason picked Bell to finish 3rd. As we mentioned earlier, Haley picked Allmendinger, who led some laps. There wasn't many people who led laps today, I'll tell you what. Allmendinger finished 9th. Bernardo finished 11th with Byron, and Stacy led a few laps to finish 13th with Blaney. So all 7 of our picks this week finished in the top 14, which is pretty good. Of course, SVG getting the win for me. That takes a big chunk out of Evan's points gap. Just in the past 2 weeks, I've gone from -71. That's a full race back. And I've chopped that down to just -18. That's right, we're back to these close point battles once again. Evan leads me by 18, and then it's 182 back for Zach, 198 back for Mason. Haley falls to 5th in points, 199 back, and then you got the rest of your part-timers. Stacy's going to try and make a run at Colin for 6th in points. I don't know. I mean, he's done working at Dairy Queen, which is unfortunate, and I don't know if he's going to make a pick for the rest of the season, which is even more unfortunate, but we'll see. I'm not giving up on that fact, but Stacy trying to make a run here to get 6th in points. Of course, 6th on back is eliminated from the championship, and to be honest, I mean, Zach, Mason, and Haley are all like right on that fringe of being eliminated as well. It's pretty much a 2-horse race between me and Evan for the championship at this point, with only 4 races to go. You got Las Vegas, Talladega, Martinsville for the round of 8, and then of course Phoenix for the championship this year. It'll be the last year for Phoenix being the championship until we get into that rotation. Of course, Homestead hosts the championship next year, which is going to be fun to see. So, yeah, but that's all we got for this shortened episode of the Throttle the Floor podcast. You know, we're trying something different here with the recap segment tonight, and then potentially a longer preview episode on Friday with me, with Evan Sager, my co-host, and then potentially even Mason and Zach making long-awaited returns. I've been wanting these preview segments to be longer, and so we'll see. Of course, we'll be previewing NASCAR from Fall Las Vegas, and then NHRA is back after a 1-week break. They start the second half of their countdown to the championship, aka their playoffs, and they're at Texas, the Texas Motorplex for the Texas Fall Nationals. So we'll see how that goes. Of course, NASCAR's championship and NHRA's championship are pretty decently tight right now. It's interesting to see, particularly with NASCAR, what they're going to do about their playoff system, if they even keep the playoffs, give it a major overhaul, if they just go nuclear and go back to full season points. We'll see how that goes. And it's also interesting with NHRA because they released their 2026 schedule. Of course, it's NHRA's 75th anniversary season next year. Still 20 races. And even though it took an extra 2 months to release, because, I mean, I get it, it's their 75th anniversary season, so it's going to take a little bit more extra time to release the schedule, there's still a date that hasn't been announced. It's the second race in the countdown. It's where Fall Charlotte used to go, and they still haven't announced it. And it's interesting because I've seen some speculation. They could go to Flying H drag strip, which is like an hour east of Kansas City. And, I mean, that would be right before Gateway. So, just those 2 drag strips are, probably 3 hours apart, tops. Although, they did have, just this past weekend, they had, Flying H had, a night of Nitro where they had, 8 Nitro cars there. So, maybe they could just be testing the waters and seeing if they can host an event. I've also heard Rockingham drag strip being thrown around, and it keeps it in the same area in North Carolina, where of course ZMAX used to be, aka ZMAX, aka Charlotte, ZMAX drag strip. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I've also seen Detroit be thrown around, or maybe even Route 66 Raceway in Joliet getting their second race date back. So I don't know, it's gonna be very interesting. I feel like with the whole to be announced, to be determined, speculation, I feel like they're trying to go do something new or return to another long-awaited track or a long-awaited date. And I feel like the only way they just suck it up and go back to Charlotte for the fall race is if those new expansion plans or new return plans just fall through. So we'll see. My prediction is, I think, and they had the advertisement for Flying H's Night of Nitro on think it was Chad Green's funny car at the Midwest Nationals a couple weeks ago. So I think Flying H can, in like a year's time span, I think Flying H is able to get renovated and get good enough and capable enough to host a national event. With all the hype up and speculation, I really do think it'll be Flying H. Plus, they've been trying to replace something after the Kansas Nationals went away in Topeka after 2023. So, I think they'll go to Flying H drag strip as that TBD date. Otherwise, they'll just throw in Charlotte if they can't fill that date. But we'll see. But yeah, we'll talk much more about that speculation and all that and do our actual previews on Friday. Whether it's just me and Evan or the whole gang, we'll see. The whole friend group, who knows. But that is all we got for tonight's shortened episode of the Throttle podcast. Make sure you tune in and listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube with Chilla Media, and tune into the Chilla Media Instagram. We got some new photos up with the Midwest Nationals from a couple weeks ago, so check those out. And yeah, so we'll see you back here hopefully Friday night for the special preview episode. Hopefully it's big. Hopefully there's good turnout here in the studio and good turnout with you guys listening. Hopefully long awaited return for Mason and Zach. I don't think either of them have been back since probably Darlington in the spring, which would have been April, something like that. It's been a while, and with Zach being off in college, him coming back, this could be, it could be it for both him and Mason. I mean, I am a senior, so. And Mason is a senior, and obviously Zach and Evan are freshmen in college, so we'll see. I do plan on the podcast continuing, whether I end up going to Mizzou or Western Kentucky or somewhere in Georgia to live with Haley, I don't know. That's different life problems. I gotta figure that out. Life of being a high school senior, I'll tell you what. But that's all we got for this week's episode of the Throttle podcast. Make sure you listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Chilla Media Instagram with all the photography, new photos, whatever. Yeah, and we will hopefully see you Friday nights with special preview episode. Thanks for listening, y'all.